The gaslights of Boston's Beacon Hill cast restless shadows across the rain-slick cobblestones outside the Dalton family mansion. I rest my forehead against the frosted cab window, watching the warm yellow glow spill from those tall, aristocratic windows. Steam curls from my paper coffee cup while the driver counts his tip for the second time. Inside, the mahogany-lined dining room flickers with soft candlelight. Crystal stems catch the flames and scatter small rainbows over perfectly pressed linens. The smell of roasted turkey drifts through the hall, blending with the stale perfume of old wealth and even older grudges. I take my usual seat at the far end of the polished table, the one that signals I'm family, never quite part of the family. Cynthia Dalton rises for her yearly Christmas toast. At 50, she still moves with the practiced grace of the debutante she once was 3 decades ago. Her string of pearls gleams as she raises her wine glass. 7 long years since my mother, Beatrice, passed away. The room quiets, except for Arthur's knife grating against bone as he carves his prime rib. Griffin fumbles with his napkin. Felicity stares into her wine as if it contains divine revelations. And I still maintain that a true family fortune rightfully belongs to true family. Bloodkin, not outsiders. Cynthia's eyes lock onto mine across the gleaming stretch of table. Her words strike like a slap. But at least the Dalton legacy, this company will always remain with real Dalton blood, not handed to outsiders. I place my wine glass down with deliberate precision. My hands stay perfectly steady. They never tremble at these dinners anymore. Arthur grunts in agreement as he saws through his dinner. A legacy that won't survive another year if that vulture, Julian Hayes, and his LHT fund keeps suffocating us in the boardroom. Felicity nods dramatically, her blonde curls bouncing. He blocked Griffin's promotion again just last week. It's like he wants the whole company to collapse. Griffin slams the table hard enough to rattle the silverware. Hayes treats us like criminals in our own boardroom. That LHT loan is bleeding us dry with their constant supervision. I keep my serene smile, sipping wine while my adoptive family tears apart the man I appointed to safeguard my inheritance. The irony tastes richer than the Bordeaux in my glass. 7 years earlier, Beatrice Fairchild's lawyer read her shocking will in this very room. $90 million in investment portfolios left solely to her adopted granddaughter, Evelyn Wright. The family's outrage had been immediate and spectacular. Arthur's frantic confession that Dalton Manufacturing would be bankrupt within months. My quiet meeting with financial advisor Julian Hayes 3 days later had been brisk and conclusive. I don't want their company. I want them dependent on me. Build an anonymous trust. Loan them only what they need. Put yourself on their board to protect the investment. The LHT Trust was created in 6 weeks. $90 million funneled into Dalton Manufacturing as a secured loan against every corporate asset. The family's desperate gratitude when Julian appeared as their mysterious savior. He never disclosed who he actually represented. For 7 years, I've listened to them call my guardian a predator while they thrive on my inheritance. Every board meeting Julian attended, every oversight vote that saved them from their own blunders, all funded by money they're convinced I don't deserve. Blood matters, I say softly, my voice carrying a harder edge. But so do gratitude, respect, and remembering who stands with you when everything collapses. Cynthia laughs, sharp as crystal, shattering. Oh, Evelyn, always the philosopher. You couldn't possibly understand the burden of carrying a real family legacy. Her words drift through the room like a winter draft. Something shifts behind my calm expression. After 30 years of playing the grateful outsider, clarity finally settles. The girl who begged for their approval for decades dies quietly in her chair. You're absolutely right, Aunt Cynthia. I would never understand that particular burden. Arthur waves his fork as though brushing away an insect. This company built our family's prestige. For generations of Dalton men running that factory, but now some anonymous fund thinks it can dictate how we operate our business? Griffin's voice cracks with righteous fury. LHT won't even reveal who they represent. They just hide behind attorneys and shell corporations. Cowards, Felicity adds, pouring herself another glass. Real business leaders show their faces. I examine their features across the candlelit table. Cynthia's sharpened cheekbones, Arthur's thinning hair, Griffin's weak chin, Felicity's spoiled pout. These people took my grandmother's affection, my childhood loyalty, my adult generosity, and flung it back at me every December for 7 years. They've made their stance unmistakable. I am an outsider. The money Beatrice left me belongs to blood family. Control of the company should never fall to someone like me. The decision forms, crisp and crystalline. Like ice in winter air, clean, certain, final tomorrow morning. I'll call Julian Hayes from my Commonwealth Avenue apartment. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Common, I'll issue new instructions. 7 years of shielding them ends now. The 7-year loan, Julian. It's time for renewal discussions. But there will be no discussions. I'll call the note. Demand full repayment in 45 days. They don't have $90 million in liquid assets. Everything they own is already pledged to LHT. To me, their downfall is inevitable. Foreclosure is guaranteed. They will lose everything. Cynthia raises her glass once more. To family blood and family legacy? To keeping what is ours in the rightful hands? I lift my wine glass and offer a gentle smile. To receiving exactly what you ask for. The toast rings through the mahogany room. Crystal striking crystal in perfect harmony. Outside, snow drifts across Beacon Hill, blanketing the cobblestones in untouched white. By spring, the Dalton legacy will belong to someone new. Someone they called an outsider. Someone who learned that while blood may be thicker than water, debt is far thicker than blood. They wanted blood family only. Tomorrow. They'll learn what happens when the outsider finally stops shielding them from the consequences of their own decisions. The next morning arrives dull and colorless through the windows of my Commonwealth Avenue apartment. Boston Common lies buried beneath untouched snow. It's a kind that turns every footprint into an accusation against perfect stillness. I cradled my coffee cup in both hands, letting the rising steam warm my face as I watch a bright red cardinal perched on my window ledge.
Ow!
Its feathers glowing against the white drifts. My phone waits on the marble counter. Julian Hayes' number is already highlighted on the screen. One call shifts the axis of everything. 7 years of silent protection ends with a single conversation. I press dial Julian. His voice comes through with the same crisp efficiency of a man who's spent his life solving crises for wealthy strangers. I assumed you'd be calling this morning. The 7-year loan, Julian. It's time for renewal negotiations. The pause that follows lasts long enough for me to count the small breaths the cardinal leaves fogging the glass. When Julian answers, his tone shifts from polite formality to measured focus. 7 years of working together taught him to hear the meaning behind the pauses. They're expecting an automatic renewal at identical terms. Arthur said it would be routine documentation. No. The word leaves my mouth steady as the January cold. We are not renewing. Call the note. Demand payment in full within 45 days. Silence stretches across the line, while Julian's trained financial mind runs the math. He doesn't ask my reasoning. After last night's Christmas dinner, there's nothing left to explain. The Dalton family drew their battle lines openly. Evelyn. They don't have $90 million in available cash. His tone carries the exhaustion of 7 years watching their careless entitlement drain every resource. All their assets are already pledged to us. Default is inevitable. We'll be legally obligated to foreclose. I understand. The company will enter Chapter 7 bankruptcy within 45 days. The entire family will lose everything. The cardinal tilts its head, studying my reflection in the frosted window. Such a tiny creature to survive a Boston winter. Such fierce resolve hidden in delicate wings. And Julian, when you send the demand letter, make sure they know exactly who LHT represents. Another pause. Longer. You want them told. I want them to know exactly who they've been calling a vulture. After ending the call, I walk to my laptop and open the secure drive Julian updates for me. 7 years of Dalton Manufacturing Board minutes scroll across the screen. Every vote. Every misguided decision blocked by LHT's oversight authority. Every reckless impulse where Julian Hayes saved what 4 generations built. Arthur's attempt to buy a corporate jet. $12 million for weekend vineyard trips, while the factory machinery remained in urgent need of repairs. Vote blocked by LHT Representative Julian Hayes. Griffin's push to fire longtime plant manager, David Miller, to install his fraternity brother, a competent 2-decade employee, sacrificed for nepotism. Vote blocked by LHT Representative Julian Hayes. Cynthia's crusade to move production overseas, eliminating 400 local jobs to temporarily inflate profits. Vote blocked by LHT Representative Julian Hayes. Every disaster averted by my hidden protection. Every catastrophe avoided by the same money they kept insisting shouldn't belong to me. 7 years of saving them from themselves while listening to lectures about not understanding family duty. My phone vibrates with Julian's confirmation text. Demand letter complete. Legal team prepared. Should I include the LHT trust documentation revealing your ownership? I type my answer without hesitation. Include everything. They deserve clarity. 2 hours later, Julian calls back with news that surprises no one familiar with the Dalton approach to life. Arthur's first instinct was panic. He immediately called Boston Trust begging for a bridge loan. They declined within 90 seconds. Naturally, LHT owns every asset, Evelyn. The factory, the machinery, the real estate, the inventory, every last chair in their offices is pledged as collateral. No bank will lend $90 million against assets that already belong to another creditor. Outside, the cardinal has flown away. Only tiny claw marks remain pressed into the snow on my ledge. Evidence of survival, carved into ice. What about Cynthia? Arthur's secretary reports she shrieked loudly enough to make the chandelier rattle and barricaded herself in the library with a bottle of scotch and her attorney's business card. And the children. Griffin and Felicity are apparently calling every wealthy acquaintance in their social circle, begging for emergency loans their trust funds could never secure. The irony tastes smoother than my morning coffee. After 3 decades of insisting I didn't belong to their bloodline, they're finally discovering what life without my protection actually looks like. The competent oversight they claimed was suffocating them was the only thing holding the entire structure together. Julian's legal team prepares the documentation with surgical accuracy. The $90 million loan agreement with its ironclad clauses, security interests filed with the Massachusetts Secretary of State, personal guarantees signed by Arthur in frantic gratitude 7 years earlier. Most importantly, the LHT Trust Charter, the Fairchild Fund structure, the beneficiary designation spelling out precisely who controls their supposed lifeline of Allen. Right. Sole owner and controlling authority. The documents will arrive at Dalton Manufacturing by certified mail, signature required. Arthur Dalton's unsteady hand will sign for the papers that dismantle everything he believes he possesses. By tomorrow morning, they will finally understand that their mysterious vulture has the face of the girl they ignored at every Christmas dinner for 7 years. The outsider, unworthy of inheritance, will reveal herself as the source of the inheritance they've been surviving on. The woman they called grateful will teach them what gratitude looks like when it stops flowing in their direction. Outside my window, new snow drifts down over Commonwealth Avenue, clean white blanketing yesterday's scattered footprints. By spring, the Dalton family legacy will carry a different name: blood relatives only, Aunt Cynthia. Starting tomorrow, you will receive precisely what you demanded. The next morning, Arthur Dalton's hands tremble as he reads Julian Hayes's demand letter in his corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. The financial brutality is unmistakable. $90 million due in full within 45 days now. 45 days now, 44 immediate foreclosure on all company assets. The words smeared together on the expensive letterhead. Payment in full. No extensions. Default authorizes immediate seizure of collateral. He reaches for his phone with quaking fingers. His first call is to his primary banker at Boston Trust. The conversation lasts exactly 90 seconds. Arthur, I've already reviewed the filing. LHT controls every asset. We cannot extend a $90 million loan against collateral already claimed by them. The banker's tone carries the calm detachment of someone slicing loose a sinking ship. You're untouchable until this resolves. The line disconnects. Arthur stares out at the harbor where cargo ships crawl like miniature models across the water. His second call is to Cynthia. Her scream ricochets through the mansion's marble corridors as he reads the demand letter aloud. The emergency family meeting assembles that evening at the mansion. Cynthia paces the Persian rug like a cornered predator, while Arthur sinks into his father's aging leather chair. The chair seems to devour him. Felicity and Griffin sit huddled on the sofa, lawyers' business cards scattered across the coffee table like losing scratch tickets. Every bank in New England refuses to work with us, Arthur announces, his practiced CEO tone splintering. Hayes has us in a legal chokehold. The security agreements cover everything. The factory, the equipment, the inventory, the real estate, even the company vehicles. Griffin's voice cracks, raw with disbelief. How did LHT get that much control? We signed that loan 7 years ago to save the company. It was supposed to be standard corporate financing. Cynthia halts her pacing. Her heels click sharply as she turns toward the spread of documents. The trust papers. Did anyone ever bother reading who actually owns LHT? Hayes dodges it every single time we ask. Arthur's secretary delivered a second packet earlier that afternoon. Supplemental documentation, Hayes had called it. The LHT trust charter sits unopened on the coffee table like a primed explosive. Felicity grabs it first. Her manicured fingers rip through the legal seal. Pages whisper as she fans them across the polished wood. Corporate hierarchy. Trust formation details. Tax classifications. Then the final page. The beneficiary designation that detonates everything. Evelyn Wright. Sole owner and controlling party. The silence swells, tight as held breath. The mantel clock ticks through the quiet. Outside, car doors slam somewhere on Beacon Hill. Then Felicity speaks. Barely audible. That's Grandma's money. Our money. Cynthia's expression shifts from bewilderment to incandescent fury. Color drains from her face, then surges back in blotches of rage. She's been controlling Julian Hayes from the beginning. Every board vote. Every decision. That little outsider has been pulling the strings of our company for 7 years. Arthur's phone vibrates with a new text message. Unknown sender. Board meeting tomorrow? 2 p.m. Attendance required. JH. The following afternoon. The emergency board meeting gathers in Dalton Manufacturing's cramped conference room. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. The battered oak table shows coffee rings from decades of family disputes. Arthur, Cynthia, Felicity, and Griffin sit on one side, arranged like defendants, awaiting verdict. Julian Hayes takes the opposite seat, his leather portfolio unopened, hands folded with precise surgical calm. We know exactly who you're aligned with, Cynthia spits across the table. We know about LHT, and we know about her. Julian's face doesn't shift an inch. His cold, slate-colored eyes stay locked on the spot just beyond their heads. Then you're fully aware of the position you've put yourselves in. Arthur leans forward, desperate now, his hands dampening the polished surface beneath him. There has to be some kind of compromise. A payment extension. Restructured terms. We've been partners for 7 years. The loan conditions were already extraordinary. 7 years at rates far below the market. LHT safeguarded this company's stability while you chased other priorities. Meanwhile, across the city inside Dalton Manufacturing's factory, plant manager David Miller takes a call he never expected from Julian Hayes. Steam curls from the assembly stations where 400 employees craft precision components. David, there's something I need you to grasp. LHT values capable leadership. Whatever happens as ownership transitions, your job is not in jeopardy. 2 decades at Dalton have taught David how to read corporate omens. He's weathered 3 recessions and 2 attempted hostile takeovers. Mr. Hayes, should I be worried about Dalton's long-term future? The company will continue. Under new owners? With stronger direction? Back in the conference room, Julian slides a second folder from his portfolio. Papers scatter over the table like exhibits laid out for a homicide case. 7 years of board meeting transcripts. LHT blocked your proposed corporate jet acquisition. $12 million. LHT stopped Griffin's push to fire David Miller. LHT prevented the overseas manufacturing relocation that would have erased 400 local jobs. Each page lands with surgical precision. Arthur's signature on the jet request. Griffin's termination draft for Miller. Cynthia's cost-cutting blueprint pushing foreign labor. LHT has been the adult supervision in this boardroom. That supervision ends today. LHT Griffin's face erupts red. You had no right. Miller should have been gone years ago. My strategies could have saved millions. Julian's tone remains as cold and steady as midwinter wind. Your strategies would have gutted worker loyalty and ruined product integrity. LHT intervened because you could not be trusted. The conference room door swings open without warning. Evelyn Wright enters in a navy suit, her dark hair tightly swept into a polished chignon. Her heels strike the linoleum with crisp, authoritative clicks as she takes the seat beside Julian. She rests both hands on the worn tabletop. "Good afternoon, family," she says, voice calm and complete in its confidence. "I think it's time we address your loan." The shock detonates through the room like live current. Arthur's lips move silently. Cynthia clutches her pearls until her knuckles turn bone white. Felicity murmurs, "Oh my God," in a loop, like a stuck prayer wheel. Beyond the factory windows, the Boston skyline blurs under the first drifting snow. 43 days until the loan matures. $90 million they don't possess. Assets they can't convert. A legacy business slipping through their grasp like dry grains of sand. The adopted granddaughter they dismissed as an outsider sits utterly still, waiting for them to respond. The shock ripples through the room again. Arthur's mouth works soundlessly like a trout yanked from water. Cynthia's pearl necklace digs into her palm as she squeezes it hard enough to bruise. Felicity can only stare, stunned. Griffin finds his voice first, leaping up so abruptly his chair screeches across the floor. "You can't do this. You can't just destroy decades of work. The courts won't allow it." His face burns the color of holiday ribbon. Grandma Beatrice would never have wanted the company ruined. I open my briefcase with slow, deliberate composure. The metal clasps snap like brittle bones. "The courts are unequivocal, Griffin. Secured creditors always prevail. And Grandma Beatrice left her money to me. I lay the documents out with methodical precision. She trusted my judgment, not yours." Projected bankruptcy analyzes from 7 years ago spread acros. Without our loan, Dalton Manufacturing would have shut its doors forever. Cynthia's fury shakes through every syllable, her disbelief simmering beneath it. "You orchestrated all of this. You've been manipulating Hayes from the shadows, steering our company, our family." "I invested when you were drowning," I reply, my tone carrying the weight of 7 years of calculated precision. "I put real oversight in place when family leadership kept failing. I saved 400 livelihoods when your cost-cutting would have wiped them out." Arthur shifts tactics, his practiced CEO cadence slipping back into place like an old suit. "Evelyn, we can collaborate. Your family. We can amend the loan terms, bring you onto the board officially." Smile I give him has the sharpness of December wind. At Christmas dinner, Cynthia announced loud and clear that family wealth belongs only to blood. That outsiders stay in their place. I lace my fingers together on the table. "I'm simply honoring your philosophy." The room holds its breath. Arthur's Adam's apple jumps as he swallows. Felicity studies the foreclosure documents, as if they're printed in another language. Cynthia attempts one last performance, her voice glazed in syrupy sweetness. "Evelyn, do your families argue? Holidays stir emotions." She leans forward with rehearsed elegance. "What if we made you a partner? 30% ownership for restructured terms." 50%? Arthur blurts, desperation cracking through his executive mask. "Equal partners." Closing my briefcase with a crisp snap that ricochets through the room. 7 years ago, you accepted LHT's $90 million without hesitation. You signed personal guarantees against every asset this company owns. My tone stays conversational, far more cutting that way. You also granted Julian Hayes full board oversight. Griffin collapses back into his chair. Cynthia's plastered smile fractures. At Christmas dinner, I was the outsider unworthy of inheritance. Today, suddenly, I'm partner material. I move toward the exit. Each heel click a quiet verdict. So tell me, which version of the truth should I believe? Felicity makes one last fragile attempt, her voice breaking. We'll give you anything you want. Full control. Just don't destroy the company my dad built. My hand pauses on the doorknob. Your father didn't build this company. Your grandfather did. Your father has been steering it toward ruin for 10 years. The truth slices the air like bitter January wind. Julian's oversight is the only reason total collapse didn't happen sooner. Arthur's complexion turns the color of weathered concrete. Evelyn, please. Think of the workers, the families depending on those jobs. I've safeguarded those jobs for 7 years while you chased private jets and nepotism. I turned the knob. You have 43 days to find new financing. I recommend starting immediately. The Dalton family sits frozen as Julian distributes the final paperwork with the efficiency of an undertaker. These outline the foreclosure timeline. If default occurs, LHT assumes operational control. His tone carries no warmth. All current management contracts will be terminated except David Miller. Under new ownership, he will serve as Chief Operating Officer. He gathers his portfolio, rising to follow me. The company will survive this transition. Under capable leadership, it may even thrive. His gaze sweeps across their defeated expressions. The real question is whether current ownership survives. The moment we step into the hallway, the family unity detonates. Their shouting bleeds straight through the thin walls. Griffin erupts first, his voice sharp with accusation. This is your fault. Your blood family nonsense pushed her over the edge. She wasn't going to do anything until you ran your mouth. Cynthia fires back, brittle and defensive. How was I supposed to know she controlled LHT? She's been sitting at our table for 7 years, acting like the grateful charity case. Arthur's reply carries the heaviness of a legacy slipping away. Stop pointing fingers. We need solutions. Who do we know with 90 million liquid? The question hangs in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Cynthia's voice cracks under the weight of looming humiliation. Everyone will know. All of Boston society will watch us lose everything to that adopted nobody. Felicity breaks down. Her sobs muffled, but unmistakable. In 20 years, Griffin mutters, business schools will teach how we lost a century-old company because we couldn't shut up at Christmas dinner. Julian and I walk across the factory floor toward the exit. Workers move with steady purpose, the rhythm of people who actually know what they're doing. These people deserve better than the privilege and competence running their lives, I say quietly. David Miller will make an excellent coup. Julian nods as we pass the plant manager's office. Through the window, David studies production schedules, gray hair bent over work that matters. 20 years he's kept this place alive despite family sabotage. Under new ownership, he'll finally have the authority his competence warrants. Outside, December air slices through my coat. Boston's skyline rises glass and steel, devoted to real business, run by real adults. The Dalton family's amateur hour ends in 43 days. They'll try every tactic now, Julian says as he unlocks his Mercedes. Emotional appeals, lawsuits, frantic partnership deals. I slide into my own car, turning the key steadily. Let them try. 7 years ago, they granted LHT security over every asset. They have nothing left to bargain with. In my rearview mirror, Dalton Manufacturing shrinks behind me. Inside its walls, 4 generations of legacy have turned into a 43-day countdown. The math is absolute. They wanted blood relatives only. Tomorrow. They'll learn what happens when the outsider stops shielding them from themselves. Day 38 dawns with a cold, colorless sky. Dirty snow streams along Commonwealth Avenue while Cynthia's name flashes on my phone. I let it ring twice before answering. Watching the morning news ticker display Dalton Manufacturing's latest stock plunge on my laptop. Darling. Cynthia's voice trembles with artificial sweetness transparent to everyone, especially me. I've been reflecting on Christmas dinner. I might have spoken too sharply. Holiday stress, you know? Beat. Could we meet? Privately? to discuss a family solution to this unfortunate misunderstanding. I scroll through my calendar as a financial reporter discusses distressed assets and looming bankruptcy. The irony tastes better than my coffee. I'm sorry, Aunt Cynthia. I don't see how that helps. Silence stretches long enough for Arthur's whispered coaching to leak through the phone. Please, she says finally. I know Beatrice left you resources. Could you lend the family $10 million? Just to get us through the restructuring? You are a Dalton, after all. The desperation dripping from her voice is almost poetic. After 7 years of calling me an outsider, Cynthia suddenly needs the Dalton name to justify begging for emergency cash. Amazing how quickly blood family expands to include adopted granddaughters. When bankruptcy starts breathing down their necks, that isn't possible, I reply, matching her tone with the same polite distance she's used on me for decades. Best of luck with your restructuring. I end the call and immediately dial Julian Hayes. He answers before the first ring finishes, voice crisp and efficient. Status update? Zero progress securing alternative financing. 3 banks shut their doors on them this week. Arthur retained a bankruptcy attorney yesterday from Morrison & Associates. Pause. They're out of options, Evelyn. Completely out. I close my laptop and walk to the window overlooking Boston Common. Joggers move across the snow-dusted paths. Dog walkers navigate icy patches. The world continuing in peaceful ignorance while the Dalton legacy collapses 45 blocks away. Thank you, Julian. See you at 9. Day 45 arrives with the certainty of sunrise. I dress in my sharpest navy suit, the one that signals authority without apology. The woman in the hallway mirror no longer seeks acceptance from people incapable of giving respect. Dalton Manufacturing's final board meeting begins at 9 a.m. in their cramped conference room. Its scarred oak table and flickering fluorescent lights unchanged despite the gravity of the day. Arthur Dalton sinks into his chair like a defeated general, his face gray from sleepless nights. Cynthia sits bolt upright, her pearls catching the light as she clutches her purse like a lifeline. Felicity and Griffin sit in hollow silence. No quips. No entitlement. Just fear. Julian enters, carrying his leather portfolio with military precision. The 45-day period has concluded. As of this moment, LHT officially declares Dalton Manufacturing in default. His words drop like weighted hammers. We are executing our foreclosure rights under the security agreement. Arthur makes one final attempt, his CEO voice cracking. Julian, we've worked together 7 years. Couldn't you convince LHT to extend the deadline? 30 more days? We're family, for God's sake. I represent LHT's interests. Those interests require immediate protection. Julian hands out foreclosure notices with methodical calm. Dalton Manufacturing will file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy at 2 p.m. as secured creditor. LHT stands first in line for asset recovery. The family stares at paperwork that reduces a century-old legacy to legal terms about liquidation and debtor in possession. For generations of pride flattened into filing numbers, Cynthia's voice cracks completely, her composure shattering. How did it get to this? We're family. Blood family. Doesn't that still mean something? I walk into the conference room one last time, my heels striking the linoleum with the certainty of a closing chapter. For pairs of eyes turned toward me, hatred, confusion, disbelief. I sit beside Julian and place my hands on the table. Family, I ask, my voice stripped of emotion they never earn. As I recall, Aunt Cynthia, you declared at Christmas that true family fortune belongs to true family blood relatives, not outsiders. Silence suffocates the room. Griffin is speechless. Felicity grips her chair until her knuckles bleach white. Arthur's face cycles through confusion, dawning realization, and raw fear. You made your beliefs very clear, I continue, my tone cold as sleet. So I honored them. The $90 million you considered improperly mine has been placed where it belongs, in LHT, not with your family. Turn to Julian, the calm of 7 years' preparation settling over me. Proceed with the bankruptcy filing. I'll see you at the auction. 3 months later, I sit in the gleaming boardroom of Summit Dynamics, 40 floors above Boston's financial district. Through towering glass windows, the harbor sparkles like scattered diamonds. As their newest board member, I review the integration proposal, merging my newly acquired assets into their operations. The irony feels sweeter than vintage champagne. The Daltons lost their century-old company to their greatest rival, while I gained a 30% equity stake in the surviving enterprise. Griffin's fraternity networking never stood a chance. Against $90 million in leverage, Summit's CEO slides the final documents across the granite table. The manufacturing division integration is seamless. Your plant manager recommendation was perfect. My first executive decision had been obvious. David Miller, the man who spent 20 years keeping this company alive, despite Griffin's relentless attempts to fire him now, sits as chief operating officer of our manufacturing division. Later, David sits across from me in my new corner office. His hands cradle his coffee like something precious. 2 decades of enduring incompetent family oversight have etched permanent worry lines into his face. Miss Wright, may I ask something? He sets the cup down gently. Why did you save the company when you could have taken the debt and walked away? I lean back in my chair, watching cargo ships drift across the harbor. 400 jobs matter more than family grudges. David, the company deserved better leadership than it had. His shoulders finally ease, relief visible as he exhales. Those people never appreciated what they had, he murmurs. Always lecturing about family legacy while dragging the legacy doesn't pass through bloodlines. David, it's built turn through competence and respect for the people who actually keep a company alive. My reflection in the glass shows a woman who no longer waits for validation from people, who never intended to offer it. 30 years of performing gratitude for conditional affection ended the night of that Christmas dinner. The adopted girl who begged to belong finally learned that belonging isn't gifted by blood relatives, it's granted by people who value what you contribute. My assistant's voice buzzes through the intercom. Miss Wright, you have a visitor? Cynthia Dalton is requesting a meeting. I consider it for exactly 10 seconds. Escort Mrs. Dalton to the exit. If she returns, notify security. Boston stretches beneath my window like a lit circuit board under gathering clouds. Somewhere in those streets, Cynthia now lives in a modest apartment near Fenway, her beacon. Hill Mansion sold 6 weeks after the bankruptcy to cover the personal guarantee shortfall. The Dalton fortune, reduced to Social Security, checks and bitter stories about ungrateful adopted relatives, Arthur's LinkedIn shows. Him seeking new opportunities for the past 4 months. Griffin stocks shelves at a suburban grocery store, the entitled prince who tried to fire. David Miller, for fun, now counts inventory until dawn. 6 months after the bankruptcy, my phone vibrates with a LinkedIn message from Felicity. She's working front desk at a law firm, her note carefully apologetic. Referencing therapy and personal growth, I delete it without opening the rest. Some bridges don't burn, they disintegrate. Evening light cuts across my office as I review Summit Dynamics' quarterly reports. Our integrated manufacturing division rebuilt under David's leadership posts record productivity. 400 workers kept their jobs because competence replaced nepotism. Profit margins climbed 20% the moment I stopped letting last names outrank qualifications. My phone shows 17 missed calls from blocked numbers. Arthur, perhaps trying to reconcile. Griffin, maybe begging for loan modifications that no longer exist. I switch the phone off and open my laptop to draft an email to Julian Hayes about the Seattle acquisition. Beside it, my journal lies open to the last entry. Family isn't DNA. Family is who stands with you when everything falls apart, who celebrates your rise without envy, who protects what matters to you. The Daltons taught me that blood runs cold, chosen loyalty runs warm. They called me an outsider looking for family. They were wrong. I was family looking for people worthy of the name. Boston Harbor blazes copper under the setting sun. Tomorrow, Julian and I will map our expansion west. The assets we acquired for $68 million now generate twice their old revenue under professional management. The Daltons insisted on blood relatives only. They got exactly what they demanded. At the bankruptcy auction, LHT enters as secured creditor. I don't spend a single new dollar. Credit bidding lets me use the $90 million they already owe. I bid $68 million, an amount no competitor can match. The bid simply reduces the debt. Clean math. Clinical precision, but the original debt was $90 million, which leaves $22 million unpaid. Arthur goes white when the bankruptcy attorney explains the consequences of the personal guarantees he signed 7 years ago. Filing bankruptcy doesn't erase the $22 million. LHT can pursue anything in their name: the Beacon Hill house, the cars, the retirement accounts. They didn't just lose the company, they lost everything. Cynthia stares at the paperwork, unfocused. This can't be legal. There must be protections for families. There are, I say, gathering my documents. They're called loyalty, gratitude, decency. You excluded me from your definition of family. Now you're living inside the consequences. Snow slicks the courthouse steps as I walk toward Julian's car. Behind me, the Daltons huddled together for the last time as wealthy people. By tomorrow, they'll be ordinary citizens facing ordinary outcomes. I slide into the passenger seat. A text from David flashes. He accepts the position of coup for the new division. Where to? Julian asks. Summit Dynamics headquarters. We have a company to run. Through the windshield, I see Arthur helping Cynthia down the courthouse steps. Her pearls catch one last glint of gray light before disappearing into their attorney's modest sedan. Blood relatives only, she said. Family fortunes for family blood. They got exactly what they asked for.